Welcome back to QHSE Talks. And today's episode is a special one because this marks the final episode in our CSP podcast series based on David Yates' framework, a journey where we systematically broke down the core domains of safety step by step, turning complex concepts into practical understanding. Now, this isn't the end of your CSP preparation. Far from it. We'll continue exploring new series, new perspectives, and deeper insights into safety and risk. But this chapter, this series, reaches its conclusion today. And before we move forward, we want to take a moment to genuinely say thank you. Thank you for staying with us through the entire journey, episode by episode, topic by topic. Whether you've been here from the beginning or joined along the way, your commitment to learning and improving as a safety professional is what makes this all meaningful. Throughout this series, we focused heavily on building your technical foundation, risk assessment, control strategies, exposure calculations, emergency management, and system thinking. We built the capability. But here's the reality. Technical knowledge, no matter how strong, is only part of what defines you as a safety professional. Because in the real world, decisions aren't always clear. Standards don't always give you the full answer. And sometimes the hardest part isn't knowing what to do, it's deciding what is right. We've spent this entire journey building your technical foundation, step by step, concept by concept. But all of that leads to one final question. What actually guides how that knowledge is used in the real world? Because at some point, every safety professional faces decisions where the standard isn't enough and the calculation isn't the challenge. That's exactly where this final chapter comes in.
And we are focusing exclusively on Chapter 40 today, the BCSP Code of Ethics. Because here is the stark reality. None of your technical knowledge matters without a moral compass to direct it.
It really doesn't. And, ethics isn't just a polite rule book or like a motivational poster in the break room.
Right, with a picture of a mountain on it or something.
Exactly. Let's think about the structure of your professional knowledge. It's basically like the relationship between concrete and rebar.
Oh, that's an interesting way to look at it. Let's build that out. I like a good construction analogy.
Right. So concrete has incredible compressive strength. I mean, it can hold up massive weight. That concrete is your technical knowledge. It's your mastery of OSHA regulations, your ability to calculate a time-weighted average for chemical exposure.
The heavy lifting.
The heavy lifting, yeah. It can support the daily operational demands of the job. But concrete has almost zero tensile strength.
Meaning it can't stretch or bend.
Exactly. The moment lateral pressure hits it, like, say, the corporate pressure from that CEO in your boardroom scenario, the concrete just snaps. It crumbles.
Because math can't defend itself against a threat to your livelihood.
Exactly the point. The BCSP Code of Ethics is the steel rebar hidden inside that concrete.
Oh, wow.
It is the internal skeleton that gives the whole structure its tensile strength. It allows the safety professional to bend under immense corporate, financial, and political pressure without breaking.
That's a really powerful way to frame it. And I want to frame this entire deep dive around that specific concept. The evolution of the safety professional from just a mere compliance cop to an actual moral guardian.
I like that, moral guardian.
Because Chapter 40 starts by defining what professional ethics actually are in this context. According to the text, professional ethics are a set of codes that establish operating guidelines for a profession, which members explicitly agree to abide by.
And the word agree is the operative mechanism there. It is an active consent.
You're signing on the dotted line.
Right. And the text notes these overriding principles provide moral guidance when serving the public. Furthermore, they apply to anyone holding status with the Board of Certified Safety Professionals.
So wait, that means?
Whether you are an applicant, a candidate sitting for the exam, or a fully credentialed holder.
Okay, so the moment you apply, you are bound. You don't get to, act unethically just because you don't have the final certificate framed on your wall yet.
No. You're in the system, you're bound by the rules.
That makes sense. But let's dig into the why here. Why does a profession need this codified? The text says it is to sustain and advance the integrity, honor, and prestige of the profession. Now, I have to be honest, when I read words like honor and prestige, I immediately think of like an exclusive country club protecting its brand.
Yeah, it sounds a little elitist.
It sounds like public relations.
Yeah.
So I have to ask, does having a written code actually change human behavior in the field? Or is this just about protecting a trademark?
Well, this raises an important question, right? If we look at the history of formal professions, I mean, medicine, law, engineering, prestige isn't about elitism.
What is it about then?
It is a functional requirement for the job. Prestige is basically a proxy for public trust.
Okay, how so? Break that down for me.
Think about a doctor. When a surgeon tells you that you need an appendectomy, you allow them to render you unconscious and literally cut you open.
Yeah, which is insane when you think about it.
It's totally insane. But you do that because the medical profession has built immense public trust through a strict code of ethics, the Hippocratic Oath.
Do no harm.
Exactly. If the public believed that surgeons were just, corporate shills cutting people open to hit a hospital revenue quota, the entire medical system would collapse.
Nobody would ever consent to surgery.
Nobody.
Wow. Okay, so applying that to our field, if the workforce on a construction site doesn't trust the safety professional like, if they view you as just a rubber stamp for management's dangerous operational goals, then your hazard analysis is totally useless.
Completely useless. They won't listen to you, they won't report near misses to you, and the whole safety system fails.
Because the trust is gone.
That trust is the currency that allows you to do the job. And to maintain that trust, the BCSP must ensure that every single credential holder is an objective guardian of well-being.
The rebar.
The rebar. The code is the mechanism that separates a recognized profession from a mere occupation.
Which brings us right into the heady artillery of the document. Standard 1. The text reads, and I'll quote it directly here, "Hold paramount the safety and health of people, the protection of the environment and protection of property in the performance of professional duties, and exercise their obligation to advise employers, clients, employees, the public, and appropriate authorities of danger and unacceptable risks to people, the environment, or property."
Let's isolate the first two words there. Hold paramount.
Capitalized in the text, by the way.
Capitalized for a reason. Paramount is perhaps the heaviest word in the English language when it comes to prioritizing.
It doesn't leave a lot of wiggle room.
None at all. It does not mean take into consideration. It does not mean balance against other factors. It means supreme, above all others.
Above profit, above the project deadline, above what your boss wants, and frankly, above your own job security.
Yeah.
That is a terrifying reality to face in the workplace.
It is. When you sign your name to the BCSP code, you are legally and ethically agreeing that the safety of human life, the environment, and property supersedes the operational preferences of the entity that signs your paycheck.
I want to ground this in a historical reality, because Standard 1 isn't just like a philosophical exercise for a classroom. Let's look at the Challenger Space Shuttle disaster in 1986.
A textbook example of this exact friction.
You had engineers at Morton Thiokol, right, the contractor that built the solid rocket boosters. They had hard data, the concrete of technical knowledge showing that the O-rings would likely fail in the freezing temperatures projected for launch morning.
And those engineers desperately tried to stop the launch. I mean, they presented their data in a teleconference the night before.
They did, but they faced immense lateral pressure. NASA was facing a massive public relations nightmare if they delayed again. Funding was on the line in Congress.
So much pressure.
And during that teleconference, the management at Morton Thiokol literally told the lead engineer to, and this is a quote, take off his engineering hat and put on his management hat.
Ugh, that phrase just makes my stomach drop. It's awful. They caved to the pressure, they overruled the engineers, and 7 astronauts died. That phrase, take off your engineering hat and put on your management hat, is the exact antithesis of Standard 1.
Perfectly said.
Standard 1 says the safety hat is superglued to your head. You cannot take it off to accommodate management.
The Challenger disaster perfectly illustrates the psychological crushing weight of corporate groupthink. And notice the second half of Standard 1.
What about it?
It lists who you have an obligation to advise of unacceptable risks. It says you must advise employers, clients, and employees. That's standard internal hierarchy, right?
Right. Tell your boss, tell the workers.
But then it adds the public and appropriate authorities.
That is massive. The BCSP is essentially deputizing you to be a whistleblower.
It is a direct mandate. The code is architected to prevent the safety professional from being siloed, silenced, or trapped within a corporate hierarchy.
Which happens all the time. All the time. If you identify a catastrophic, unacceptable risk, Let's say you find a critical flaw in a structural support of a public bridge, or a massive undocumented chemical leak into a local water table, and your executive team refuses to mitigate it. Your ethical obligation does not stop at the boardroom door.
You can't just say, well, I sent an email, I covered my bases. It's management's problem now.
No, you are ethically bound to go to the appropriate authorities, the EPA, OSHA, the local fire marshal, the press if necessary.
Let's play devil's advocate here for a second.
Okay, hit me.
What constitutes an unacceptable risk? Because, the code doesn't provide a mathematical formula for unacceptable.
Sure.
How does the safety professional weigh that? You're sitting in a meeting, millions of dollars are on the line. Your boss says, look, the risk of a fall here is elevated, but it's acceptable for this 48-hour window so we can hit our bonus.
Standard 1 places an agonizing psychological burden on the CSP to make that judgment call.
It absolutely does. It requires immense courage, and it forces you to confront the financial realities of your job. Because following Standard 1 might get you fired by an unethical employer.
It might, but this is exactly why the code exists as a binding external agreement. When you are sitting in that room, feeling the glare of the project manager, you don't have to rely solely on your own personal willpower. You lean on the rebar.
You pull the code out of your pocket as a shield.
Exactly. You say, my certification, my professional standing, and my legal liability prevent me from approving this. It removes the emotion from the argument.
Oh, that's a great point.
You are no longer just an annoying employee getting in the way. You are a bound professional citing a universal standard.
So if you're listening to this and you're auditing a site tomorrow and a foreman asks you to look the other way on a trenching hazard just for the afternoon, Standard 1 is the legal shield you deploy.
Use it. That's what it's there for.
And that demand for absolute truth leads us directly into Standards 2 and 3, which govern how the safety professional actually communicates.
Let's analyze the language of Standard 2. It demands that the credential holder be honest, fair, and impartial. You must act with responsibility and integrity.
Standard stuff so far.
Right. But the most complex phrase in this standard requires you to adhere to high ethical conduct with balanced care for the interests of the public, employers, clients, employees, colleagues, and the profession.
See, I have a real problem with the phrase balanced care.
Really? Why?
How do you balance entities that are inherently at war with each other?
Yeah.
I mean, the employer wants to maximize production speed and minimize cost.
True.
The employee wants a completely hazard-free environment with maximum comfort. And the public wants zero environmental emissions. How can one human being provide impartial, balanced care to competing interests without just becoming a weak, compromised machine?
That is the tightrope walk of the profession. But balanced care does not mean making everyone happy.
Okay.
It does not mean splitting the difference on safety. It means you must be an objective arbiter of facts rather than an advocate for one specific political or financial side.
So you aren't the union representative, advocating only for the worker at the detriment of the business's ability to operate.
And you aren't the corporate lawyer defending the company's bottom line at all costs. You are the advocate for the reality of the risk.
The reality of the risk. I like that.
Balanced care means your risk assessment matrix doesn't change based on who is asking for the report. The data is the data, whether it benefits the CEO's quarterly report or the union's grievance filing.
And you can't be an objective arbiter of truth if you don't understand the environment you are communicating in. And that transitions perfectly into Standard 3.
Yes, Standard 3 is crucial right now.
It states, issue public statements only in an objective and truthful manner, and only when founded upon knowledge of the facts and competence in the subject matter.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we really need to contextualize this within the modern era. We live in an ecosystem of rapid information, rampant misinformation, and instant communication.
Everyone has a megaphone.
Everyone.
The 24-hour news cycle, LinkedIn, X, viral TikToks. A safety incident happens, and within 10 minutes, everyone online is a forensic structural engineer.
It's maddening. Let's look at the Deepwater Horizon oil spill in 2010.
Oh, perfect example.
The moment that rig exploded, the media landscape was flooded with experts speculating on the blowout preventer, the cementing process, the decisions made by BP, Transocean, and Halliburton.
Everybody had a hot take.
Right. And what Standard 3 dictates is that a BCSP credential holder cannot participate in that speculation.
Wow, really?
It explicitly forbids you from guessing or speaking outside your area of competence.
So if you are a safety professional who whose entire 20-year career has been in, say, indoor ergonomics and warehouse material handling.
Which is a very respectable career, by the way.
Absolutely. But you have absolutely no business going on a deep dive show or posting a viral thread claiming, why the blowout preventer failed on a deep water drill ship.
By doing so, you are leveraging the prestige of your credential to validate a guess. The public assumes you know what you're talking about because you have CSP after your name.
They see the letters and trust you.
Exactly. If you speak without actual foundational knowledge of the facts, you are deceiving the public and discrediting the entire profession. It is a literal ethical violation of the BCSP code to armchair quarterback, a disaster.
It's almost an oath of silence unless you have the hard data. I find that incredibly refreshing. Objective and truthful.
Right.
Founded upon knowledge.
Right.
But that inherently demands that we define what knowledge actually is. How do we define what you genuinely know versus what you think you know?
That is the causal link to Standards 4 and 5. You cannot speak the truth if your foundational knowledge is deeply flawed. Standard 4 addresses the ethics of competence.
Let me break down Standard 4. It says, undertake assignments only when qualified by education or experience in the specific technical fields involved. Accept responsibility for their continued professional development by acquiring and maintaining competence through continuing education, experience, professional training, and keeping current on relevant legal issues.
This standard is the BCSP's direct inoculation against corporate hubris and a psychological phenomenon known as the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Oh, I love talking about this. For those who might not be familiar with the term, the Dunning-Kruger effect is a cognitive bias where people with low ability at a task overestimate their ability.
Basically, you don't know enough about a subject to realize how completely ignorant you are about it.
Exactly. You think it looks easy because you don't understand the complexities.
And in the safety profession, the Dunning-Kruger effect is quite literally lethal. But corporate culture often actively encourages it.
It does.
Think about the pervasive mindset in modern business. Fake it till you make it.
Oh, absolutely. Stretch goals. Stepping out of your comfort zone. Say yes to the project now, figure out how to do it over the weekend. It's celebrated as ambition.
It is celebrated because there is a massive financial incentive to seem competent. If a consulting firm is bidding on a lucrative contract to manage safety at a highly complex petrochemical refinery, there is immense financial pressure to say, yes, our team is fully qualified, even if their primary experience is in residential construction.
I want to push back on this a little bit, or at least explore the gray area.
Sure, go for it.
Let's say I'm a listener. I've been a safety manager at a meatpacking plant for 5 years. I'm good at it. Suddenly, the company acquires a specialized chemical processing facility down the road, and the executive team says, congratulations, you are now the regional safety director over both facilities.
A very common scenario, promotion by acquisition.
Right, but I don't know the specific technical fields of chemical processing. Am I violating the code of ethics by taking the promotion? Because if I say no, I might lose my job entirely.
That is the exact friction point Standard 4 addresses. The code doesn't say you can never learn a new industry.
Okay, good.
But it dictates how you undertake the assignment. If you accept that promotion, walk into the chemical plant, and immediately start signing off on confined space entry permits for reactors you don't understand, relying on your general meatpacking safety knowledge, yes, you are committing an ethical violation.
Because general safety knowledge does not automatically transfer to highly specialized hazards.
Not at all. To accept that role ethically under Standard 4, you must immediately and transparently communicate your competency gap to management.
You have to admit what you don't know.
Yes. And you must surround yourself with subject matter experts, process safety engineers, industrial hygienists, until you acquire the specific technical education required. You cannot fake your way through a risk assessment.
It's like a pilot suddenly deciding to fly a completely different aircraft without training just because they know the theory of flight. Enthusiasm does not replace qualification.
That's a great analogy.
And notice the second half of Standard 4. It mandates that you keep current on relevant legal issues. This proves the safety field is not static.
Laws change. Regulations update.
If you are using a 2015 legal understanding of fall protection in a 2026 workplace, your ignorance isn't just a technical gap, it is an ethical failure. A static professional is a dangerous professional.
Which naturally flows into Standard 5, which governs how you represent your competence to the world. It states you must represent academic and professional qualifications accurately, And crucially, you must represent your degree of responsibility in prior assignments accurately.
Ah, this targets the resume inflators.
It does. It's easy to catch someone lying about having a master's degree. But Standard 5 goes after the subtle embellishments.
The padding.
Exactly. Let's say you were a junior safety coordinator on a massive billion-dollar tunneling project. Your job was primarily conducting daily toolbox talks and checking fire extinguisher tags.
Important work, but very entry level.
Right. But on your resume or during an employment solicitation, you write, managed safety operations for a billion-dollar subterranean tunneling project.
Oof. Yeah, I see that all the time on LinkedIn.
You didn't lie about being on the project, but you fundamentally misrepresented your degree of responsibility. Why is this an ethical violation and not just typical resume puffery?
Why?
Because if an employer hires you based on that exaggerated claim, they're going to place the lives of a tunneling crew in your hands under the false assumption that you have engineered ventilation and shoring systems before. Your embellishment puts lives in immediate danger.
Wow. Okay, so we've established the foundation. Paramount duty to human life, objective truth over speculation, and absolute verifiable competence.
The core pillars.
Now, we have to transition into the most difficult aspect of professional ethics. What happens when the threat to safety isn't a hazard and isn't management, but is the person sitting in the cubicle next to you?
Yeah, we have arrived at Standard 6, the heavy burden of peer regulation.
Standard 6 reads, conduct their professional relations by the highest standards of integrity and avoid compromise of their professional judgment by conflicts of interest. That's the baseline.
Right.
But the second sentence is where the rubber meets the road. When becoming aware of professional misconduct by a BCSP certificant, take steps to bring that misconduct to the attention of the Board of Certified Safety Professionals.
This is the standard that forces you to break the psychological chain of groupthink. It requires you to overcome the bystander effect.
The bystander effect being the psychological phenomenon where individuals are less likely to offer help to a victim or report a problem when there are other people present. Everyone assumes someone else will handle it.
Right. It's not my problem.
And in a corporate environment, this manifests as the normalization of deviance. We saw this in the Challenger disaster, and we saw it in the Columbia Space Shuttle disaster with the foam shedding.
Right, where deviant behavior becomes routine. Yes. Deviant, unsafe, or unethical behavior occurs. There is no immediate catastrophic consequence, so the behavior becomes accepted as the new normal. Standard 6 is designed to aggressively interrupt the normalization of deviance by making every single certificate an active, deputized enforcer of the code.
Let's ground this in a highly specific technical example to show how difficult this really is in practice.
Okay, let's hear it.
Let's say you and a colleague, another CSP whom you've known for 10 years, are conducting industrial hygiene air sampling for silica dust exposure in a manufacturing plant.
A very common high-stakes scenario. Silica exposure causes silicosis, which is an irreversible and fatal lung disease.
Exactly. You are using air sampling pumps. These pumps pull air through a filter cassette at a very specific flow rate, usually calibrated with a rotameter, to calculate the time-weighted average of silica dust a worker breathes over an 8-hour shift. The math only works if the pump flow rate is perfectly calibrated.
Because if the pump pulls less air than you record, the final calculation will artificially lower the reported exposure level, making a toxic environment look legally compliant.
Right. So you are walking through the plant, and you catch your colleague intentionally miscalibrating the rotameter. They are deliberately dropping the airflow rate by 15%.
Oh, man.
You confront them, and they break down. They tell you they're going through a brutal divorce, they are drowning in debt, and the plant manager offered them a massive under-the-table bonus if the silica report comes back clean so the company can avoid a $500,000 ventilation upgrade.
The psychological weight of that moment is just staggering. This is your friend, you know their kids, you understand their financial panic.
The natural human inclination is to say, look, I'll fix the calibration this time. Don't ever do this again. I won't tell anyone. But the code says that is not an option.
The code says you must report them to the Board of Certified Safety Professionals, not just scold them privately. You must actively turn them in.
That feels so harsh. Why did the board codify something so draconian?
Because a profession is only as strong as its willingness to self-police. What's fascinating here is that if the BCSP relied purely on OSHA or the general public to catch ethical failures, the credential would be worthless.
Because the public doesn't know how to calibrate a rotameter.
Exactly. Only you, the peer, know what to look for.
Yeah.
If you turn a blind eye to your colleague's falsified pump calibration, you are choosing to protect your friend's temporary financial stability over the permanent lung capacity of every worker in that plant.
Wow. Put that way, the choice is clear, but still brutally hard.
By ignoring it, you become complicit. You become a co-author of the hazard. Standard 6 dictates that your duty to the public always overrides your loyalty to your tribe. It is an incredibly isolating burden.
Following Standard 6 can cost you friendships and create a deeply hostile work environment.
It can, but it is the non-negotiable price of admission into this professional tier.
It separates the professionals from the amateurs. You have to be willing to stand in the fire.
And as we move into the final two standards, the BCSP expands the definition of what a safety professional's jurisdiction actually is. It moves beyond just the physical hazards, the silica dust, the scaffolding, the chemical reactors, and into the realm of human dignity.
Let's dive into Standard 7.
Yes.
It states, ACT in a manner free of bias, discrimination, or harassment on the basis of race, color, religion, creed, gender expression, age, national origin, ancestry, disability, marital status, sexual orientation, veteran status, or any characteristic protected by the law of the applicable jurisdiction.
For a large portion of industrial history, the safety profession was heavily, almost exclusively, focused on physical kinematics, machine guarding, fall protection lanyards, lockout, tagout procedures.
Tangible stuff.
What Standard 7 does is explicitly recognize that psychological safety, equity, and human rights are fundamental components of a physically safe working environment.
It acknowledges that a workplace cannot be considered safe if a subset of the workforce is being harassed or marginalized, because safety isn't just about hard hats, it's about human performance.
Yeah. Let's view this through the lens of cognitive science. If an employee is suffering from discrimination or sexual harassment on the factory floor, their working memory is fundamentally compromised.
Because they're stressed out.
Their brain is consumed by threat detection, navigating the social toxicity, anticipating the next slur, figuring out how to avoid their harasser.
And when working memory is consumed by psychological threats, situational awareness drops to near zero.
Precisely. The cognitive load spikes, and they become exponentially more susceptible to physical accidents. They don't hear the backup alarm of the forklift. They forget to double-check the pressure valve on the manifold. Bias and harassment are the precursors to physical catastrophes.
If we look at the 1984 Bhopal gas tragedy, one of the worst industrial disasters in human history, where a pesticide plant released tons of methyl isocyanate gas, killing thousands. A massive underlying factor was the marginalized status of the local Indian workforce.
A perfect example.
The corporate entity largely ignored the safety complaints and decaying infrastructure reports from the local workers in a way they never would have tolerated at a plant in, say, West Virginia. Marginalization breeds disaster.
The ethical safety professional must champion an environment that is equitable and inclusive, because toxic behaviors degrade human dignity and destroy the safety culture. Standard 7 makes the safety professional a cultural guardian within the organization. You cannot just audit the fire extinguishers, you must audit the culture.
That is a profound responsibility.
Yeah.
And Standard 8 takes that cultural guardianship and pushes it completely outside the boundaries of the corporate property line.
Standard 8 is the capstone, it really is.
It says, seek opportunities to be of constructive service in civic affairs and work for the advancement of the safety, health, and well-being of their community and their profession by sharing their knowledge and skills.
This essentially argues that the knowledge you hold, the ability to identify, assess, and mitigate risk, is too important to human flourishing to be locked inside a 9-to-5 job.
So what does this all mean?
If you possess the rebar, you have a duty to help reinforce the structures around you. Being a CSP isn't a job description, it is a worldview.
So practically speaking, what does this look like for you, the listener? Now that you are reaching the end of this CSP journey, how do you plan to take this knowledge out of the workplace and into your local civic affairs?
It means taking your expertise into your community. It means volunteering on your local municipal zoning board to ensure new developments have proper emergency vehicle access.
Oh, that's a great application.
It means helping your child's school design a more effective active shooter or severe weather evacuation plan. It means mentoring young students in STEM fields, explaining how science actually protects people in the real world.
It's the transition from being a corporate practitioner to being a civic leader.
Because that is what true professional mastery looks like. It is the generous application of knowledge.
As we start to bring this deep dive in for a landing, there is one final vital detail in the text that we cannot overlook. The source specifically notes that these ethics and standards were approved and became effective on January 1st, 2023.
That date is incredibly significant. It proves that this code of ethics is a living, breathing, evolving document. These are not static stone tablets brought down from a mountain in 1970.
They are continuously updated to reflect the shifting reality of the modern world, which leads to a provocative thought for you to mull over as you close the book and prepare for your exam. Think about the radical changes we are seeing in the landscape of labor right now.
Oh, it's changing so fast. The explosion of artificial intelligence making hazard assessments, massive shifts toward remote work and the gig economy, where traditional employee safety hierarchies just dissolve completely.
And the impact of climate change introducing unprecedented heat stress on outdoor labor forces.
As technology and society fundamentally alter how humans work, what might the BCSP Code of Ethics need to address in 2033 that we haven't even thought of today?
Right. If an AI system designs a flawed safety protocol and a worker is injured, who holds the paramount ethical responsibility? You, the software developer, the vendor. How will you, as a future leader holding this credential, help shape those new ethical boundaries?
That is the essential question. Ethics must aggressively keep pace with innovation, or innovation will steamroll human safety.
We want to take a moment to sincerely, deeply thank you, the listener, for sticking with us through this entire journey. As we mentioned, this is the final deep dive in the CSP preparation series under the QHSE Talks banner.
It is a monumental undertaking to prepare for this certification. The sheer discipline required to master the math, the sciences, the management theories, and finally, the agonizing gray areas of these ethical standards. It is a true testament to your dedication.
It really is.
We want to congratulate you on your commitment to becoming a better, more ethical safety professional.
Remember the metaphor. The technical knowledge is the concrete. It is heavy, it is necessary, and you have mixed it well. But the ethics are the rebar.
Keep the code as your internal skeleton. Let it give you the tensile strength to bend under pressure without ever breaking.
As you step into that exam room, and more importantly, as you step back into the boardroom or out onto the job site, remember that the landscape will rarely be black and white. It will be complicated by money, by corporate pressure, and by human frailty. But you now have the tools to navigate that murkiness. Trust the code, trust your training, and always, always hold paramount the safety of the people relying on you. Thank you all for joining us for this series finale on QHSE Talks. Good luck in your exams, and keep looking out for the invisible.